So, welcome to the Secure Dynamics TechCast. With me, I have a first-time guest, Michelle Davidoff. A little bit of Michelle's background: he is a business development strategist with a higher education focus. He has over 30 years of experience in the infotech, infrastructure, and strategic planning in higher ed. Prior to his current role, Michelle was worked for 29 years at the California State University. In his most recent role, he was the CIO for the largest four-year university system in the US, Tech and Civ. So, Michelle, as I was researching CSU and you, I was also taken aback by the fact that the CSU is the largest four-year public university system in all of United States. So, thanks for having me do the research, and I learned something. So, welcome to the show.
Hello, nice to be with you. And just for clarification purposes, I was the Chief Infrastructure Officer, which is CIO, but the CIO role sometimes is more commonly used as Chief Information Officer.
Correct.
So I was responsible for the infrastructure for all 23 campuses.
Got it. Okay. So that's a good segue. So from an infrastructure perspective, and again, looking at the numbers, right? 500,000 students and faculty and so on and so forth, you're talking about a lot of infrastructure spread across a lot of campuses, right? So putting that into perspective for the benefit of the viewers, just given your pole position as the head of infrastructure, what do you want to share with the users? And COVID is probably a catalyst, but even before that, what are some of the biggest learnings for you in terms of how do you drive cost efficiency with something as large as the CSU?
So I think that the biggest opportunities to be cost effective is enabling competition. And what that meant for the CSU is creating methodologies and processes to create a vendor agnostic RFP. And I developed a method by which I can prove to anybody that there was no predetermined winner in any of the RFPs that I was responsible for. Once the vendor community realized that you are truly open for competition, the discounts that you will be able to get are significant. So I guess this is the American way. It's all about the competition, but the competition needs to feel that they have a chance of winning those RFPs. Aligned with that is, and probably I will get some not so positive feedback, is never trust a vendor when they tell you that this is the best pricing that you can get. Competition is what will give you the best pricing, not negotiating with one vendor. So those two things tied very closely together into developing functional requirements. Most RFPs that I've seen before had what I called features in them, and features associated with vendors. Functional requirements, the beauty of them is you describe what is the quote unquote problem that you're trying to solve without putting a vendor terminology or wording into it. Hence, you are letting now everybody trust that you are really truly open for competition.
Yeah, so that's a great segue into the transition towards cloud, which obviously allows for significantly more competition given the marketplace and the availability or the democratization of the ability for people to compete. But before we go to the cloud, one question that I had in mind as you were talking about being open to competition and giving every vendor a fair chance is this concept of incumbency, right? Which is, hey, I've won CSU, I'm the incumbent over there, so therefore the renewals have to come. So how did you kind of play that card where even if somebody has won a deal or won an RFP and they've got a pole position, it doesn't mean that the renewals will happen automatically? Is there any best practices that you put in place to allow for that agility and nimble minded thinking that even an incumbent vendor needs to have?
Yeah, this is an excellent question that we struggled with for quite some time. And what I have learned is that technology changes very often. And what happens when technology changes, you need to retrain your people, you need to re-educate the community, you really need to understand how to leverage the technology. So the incumbent had some advantage over new vendors because maybe you don't have to go through 3 or 4 sessions of training because you've gone through the fundamentals of that technology, and although the technology have changed from the same vendor, you still can need the currency of the technology. So what we have done is develop the cost of the transitions to include training, to at times include the loss of productivity, because when you go to training, you're not in the office.
Yeah.
Now, when you look at the CSU and the scope of this means hundreds of people participating in all of this. For smaller organizations, probably the impact can be less, especially if the pricing for the hardware, for example, are significantly lower. So you need to look at a total cost of ownership on not only the cost of changing the vendor, but also the hardware cost, the software, and the maintenance, and develop methodologies to calculate the true TCO that we could around it. At times, we even calculated the difference in the power consumption,
Wow.
because some of those technologies were so significant that we can say, you know what, this technology from this vendor versus this vendor will cost an additional $1 million a year to the CSU to operate them.
Yeah, I mean, as you mentioned that as somebody who's never run operations, that would be something that I wouldn't even think about. But now that you mentioned that, it's the power consumption, the cooling, I mean, things that are core to the whole thing. So talk a little bit about the cloud transition, right? And clearly it changes the economics significantly, and quote unquote, everybody is in the subscription economy. But is there still an early mover advantage? Is there still a incumbent advantage even while going to cloud, number one? And number two, what are some of the myths in terms of cost efficiencies that you've had to deal with when going to cloud, or what are some of the cloud efficiencies that you truly found beneficial?
So what I found is just getting a complete inventory of your data center suddenly makes you think and reevaluate everything that you're doing. What I found is that campuses have a lot of data centers, and I think that a lot of professors, when they're doing research and they have a few servers, decided they are building their own data center. So the inventory suddenly puts in perspective what people think the data centers of the campus are. So I think now that you have an inventory, for me, what came out of it quite often is I defined as IT dirty little secret. That about a third of what was running in the data centers was IT infrastructure tools to run the data centers, to run the networks, to run whatever is needed. And the applications that were used were always the perfect application for every single scenario. And the big thinking around it is maybe it's okay if the software that you have has 80% of the capabilities that are perfect and 20% that are not so perfect. So suddenly you can eliminate tremendous amount of services in the data center to reduce the cost, even if you don't go to the cloud. So the first thing is efficiency and knowing your campus, knowing your data center is a big thing to start with. You will also be surprised to see how much consumption you are paying for running the data center. And in most campuses, facilities will be the ones paying for the electrical bill and the generators and everything. The forcing of the campus to start thinking more globally about who is paying for it. It doesn't matter if it's facilities or it's IT. It's how we utilize the money that we have to get a very efficient IT. So it's another thing that has happened in quite some places is you're starting to look at what is your power consumptions and start measuring it to help with the calculations. Um, I think that training and HR are a key component of your cloud thinking. HR needs to be involved because positions descriptions needs to be updated. Terminology needs to be inclusive of all the new things that the cloud is doing in order to recruit the right people, in order to justify and doing transitions to new technology. I
So,
think that
yeah, go ahead.
one more thing is I think that the biggest opportunity when you think about migration to the cloud is it's almost a revolution in an evolution speed. And what I mean by that, usually in revolutions, people die because there
Yeah.
is big fights. But revolutions are important in order to create a big shift in how we think about things. The biggest new thinking is what most people capture as capex versus opex. Now, I think that in higher education, that thing doesn't really apply because capex in higher education is truly building a huge generator. The rest of the money is money that comes every year. And from a CFO's perspective, everything besides new building, the entire budget of the campus is really OPEX. So it's how you transition from getting millions of dollars in one year and nothing the following years into helping the CFO develop methodologies and the right migration. So in 3, 5, or 7 years, all of your money is really spent on a monthly basis, and you don't get these big spikes of, oh my God, I need to replace my storage, and I do need $1 million for the storage, and the CFO is in a not very comfortable position.
Great insight. So one final question, Michelle, which, and you mentioned this a few times, right? Which is the ability for, I'm going to use the word because it's commonly used, cloud native thinking. But really, the question is, what attributes have you seen people in your organization who've been able to embrace cloud and be able to be effective in it? And what are some of the attributes that have actually prevented really good, let's say, on-prem infrastructure folks from really embracing the cloud? So again, people attributes that you think have helped or hindered somebody's success.
Uh, the biggest challenge I find is fear. And the fear is that I'm going to lose my job because everything is going to the cloud. Hence, this is why I mentioned both training and HR. I think that it's important to get HR involved and lower the stress level on people who are learning new technologies by ensuring the organization that there will be no layoffs in this. What might happen is the reshifting of the IT priorities. Most of IT shops are really short on security people. So if the data center people, the sysadmin and so forth, if they have some fears that they will lose the job because some of the work that they are used to, unpacking servers and mounting and all of those wonderful complex things that can be done so much more effectively at scale, that try and see who is the right aptitude for security. I think that we can always use more people helping with academic technology. Some of them might be interested. So this is a time for opportunity for people who want to learn the new data center and for people who want to find new opportunities on the campus.
Yeah, great insight. I know, like people sometimes, I mean, fear is the biggest obstacle in many people's forward progression. So thanks for your insight. I'm looking forward to future conversations.
It was very nice talking with you, Ashwin, and looking forward for more conversations.
Thanks, Michelle.